Got to hit you with Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell as Harry Carey, as I always do. One more time.
Hi.
Hey, how's everybody doing? My name's Ryan Tamori. This is the Pit Press Live. I'm one of the co-hosts. Let me move my hand away from my mouth. I'm one of the co-hosts, the co-owner here on the Pit Press. We're happy to have everybody on. We have we have a full house tonight. My comedy and sense of humor is terrible. I don't want to look at John Stamos. Rick, I see the Bay Bridge and I think of you. Or the Golden Gate Bridge and I think of you. Joining us tonight, very special episode, as I mentioned, Full House. But I'll start with the gang, the usual suspects. He is my co-founder in this endeavor that we call New Mexico Alumni Media and the Pit Press, now the Pit Press Live. We're growing up. We're moving on up. Mr. Eric Malton, how are you?
Hey guys, I'm good. I'm happy to jump on. Let's talk some NIL and some other stuff going on in the lovely world of college sports. So we'll get into it.
He is all the way from the Bay Area. He's a two-time offensive state lineman. You know the introduction. He's a two-time offensive state lineman for San Juan Mendoza and the St. Pius Sardines. Played basketball under Damian Segura, and he dominates men's leagues over the age of 30. Filipino men's leagues over the age of 35. That sounded bad and is a mouthful. Hey, his name's Richard Thompson. Rick, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm riding a high. Took my daughter to the San Francisco Zoo today, and 2 teenagers told me I had cool gear. So I am feeling good. I'm pumped up, ready to talk about some other kids making money here in the NIL world. So let's get it going.
It's the little things in life when you get older. You can follow him at NM Sports Capper. See Ed there on Twitter. If you need to know anything about a mid-major player, he's your guy. Mr. Jacob Neff. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ryan. No cool stories like Rick today. I didn't get to go to the zoo, or nobody commented on my appearance or anything, probably because I haven't left the house in 3 weeks since my surgery. So, yeah, I'm just I'm riding my own high here. I'm tooting my own horn. So ready to talk some basketball and excited to have Mackenzie on today to hear about some NIL stuff.
So when we were live the other night, I wrote it down. The Dodgers and Diamondbacks.
Not the Bears.
The Diamonds and Diamondback and Dodgers game got delayed because of bees, and I told you I would come up with all the bee jokes, and
The bee bit my bottom. No, my bottom's big.
as you all know me with The Simpsons, there we go. The bee bit my bottom. Now my bottom's big. And then my favorite.
Oh, I'm afraid he couldn't be here.
Nick, Ed, I'm sorry. Nick said he couldn't be here. Anyway, okay. I will stop with that. He's a Lobo fan since 1970, and the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs. His name is Mr. Ed Nunez. Long time no talk. How are you, Ed?
Well, I just got to laugh whenever you talk about getting old, Ryan. I just had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, man. I'm not going to tell you guys how old I am, but when you say you're old or getting old, geez, man, I guess I'm just happy to be still here at my age. So, yeah, you guys are so damn young, you have no idea, but yeah, and that's good. You know what? That's great, Eric. You just celebrated the birth of a daughter. That's awesome, man. Rick, your little girl is still young enough to go to the zoo. My little granddaughter just turned 6 yesterday. So that's a little hint for you guys, man, about how old I really am. That's all right. Enjoying talking NIL and hoops and everything else with you guys, man.
Oh, it's like my child. He told my mom she had a big butt, and then he washed his hands with a crust of a Domino's pizza the other day, and we refer to him as Fart Man, but he is excelling in math, so we're happy about those things. Okay, I appreciate his patience on this in my terrible comedy hour. He's a co-owner of Abrazo Homes, co-founder of Abrazo Homes. He's a board member of 505 SVF, 505 Sports Venture Foundation, and the Lobo Club. His name is Mackenzie Bishop. Mackenzie, how are you doing, man? And thank you for putting up with me. And we appreciate you joining us.
Oh, it's all good. If you're not doing dad jokes, then you're doing something wrong from all the dads on here, right? So, no, I'm great. Happy to be here and excited to talk about the close of the transfer portal. Thank goodness. It was a very stressful 45 or 42 days or whatever it was. But, yeah, it's good to be here and excited to talk about Lobo hoops.
I'm very awesome of that, and we're grateful to have you. We really appreciate it. And my last terrible pop culture reference. I happened to watch Aliens the other night, and if you've ever seen that movie, the android on board is Mackenzie Bishop. There we go. That was Sigourney Weaver yelling. Okay, I will stop with that. I wanted to start here, and then we'll wrap around and get to Mackenzie. But I thought this tweet was fascinating. 10 hours ago today, it's UNM men's head basketball coach Richard Pitino. Shout out to Donovan, Q, True, Braden, Mustafa, Diarj, Nelly, Shane for sticking with the Lobos. I probably mispronounced that guy's name. I'm sorry. They all could be moved on. They all could have moved on, but chose to continue to believe in what they are doing. Well, let's celebrate those that stay. We added great pieces too. The future is bright. Wolf emoji. I mean, that's good to hear if you're a Lobo fan. I not Mr. Negativity on here. I feel like maybe there's a little bit of a slight to JT Toppin, but I don't know. I am going to start with Ed because we didn't have him on Tuesday, and then we have a plethora of questions, and we definitely want Mackenzie's insight. He is our guest on this podcast, but excuse me, not podcast, live show. I got to get that out of my brain. But Ed, you weren't able to join us when you heard the news of JT Toppin selecting to go into the transfer portal the last day. What did you make of that?
Well, I think, one of the things I had said is I thought there was going to be one more transfer, somebody transferring. I just didn't expect it to be him. George Scott, the former Lobo, described it as a punch to the gut. And that's kind of how I felt. He's, a freshman of the year, a finalist for freshman of the year in the Mountain West, finalist for freshman of the year in nationwide. So when I read that and I read Jeff Grammer's article in the paper, I think I felt probably like the rest of everybody else here. We had said New Mexico needed to build around Dent and Toppin, and it looked like both of them were going to stay. So Mackenzie, when you said that about the portal yesterday closing, I was still a little bit nervous till midnight. I was telling a couple of my friends, hopefully Donovan stays. They're the keys to build around. So I think, but again, one of my friends said this to me: we can't be surprised. We really can't be surprised, and we can't be. I read the story about JT Toppin and Ramon Sessions, his agent, encouraging him to go practice against pros instead of staying here. I still think he could have done the same thing here and developed and been a draft choice. I still think he could have done that here. And Mackenzie, you know this better than anybody else. It's a different time in age in college athletics. You can have an agent. And, Ramon Sessions played in the NBA for 11 years. He's in his ear. He's telling him to have this, and he's going to take some too. He's going to take some of that pie. Whole different time. So I'll be honest with you. I was very disappointed. I was, but according to what I've heard, New Mexico's got some targets, that they're citing to take Toppin's, and no one can fulfill that place because we're looking at least another year of development, strength training tools this summer that he was going to work on as far as his game. So I'm a little, disappointed that we won't see him play here next year because I sure enjoyed him this year. I really did. And I was looking forward to seeing how much he could improve over the summer. So probably the way everybody else felt here, very disappointed and sad that he's not going to be here.
Appreciate that, Ed. And this is today's episode, I feel like it's going to be a little bit more of an open forum. And we'll get to Mackenzie here in a second. Feel free to comment, on YouTube, Instagram, and X or Twitter, the artist formerly known as Twitter. Feel free to chime in. As again, we had a great show the other night, and you know who I'm looking for.
Say hello to Miguel Sanchez.
Looking for you, Miguel Sanchez. I know you'll comment, and I forgot to read it the other night when you signed off. Guys, Rick, Eric, Jacob, feel free to chime in whenever. Rick was kind enough. I'll just blatantly say this. Rick was kind enough to get some questions, but I'll start with this one, and then anybody can chime in and kind of discussion forum. But Mackenzie, I think to start off with, is there anything that can be done in NIL era to help manage the rosters? What else needs to be done? I mean, I think that's been the talk of, 2-year contracts, and then kind of getting into what UNM is a mid-major. All of us sitting on here are UNM alumni. And I think to a basketball degree, it's really not a mid-major. But I just wanted your thoughts on that question and how, these rosters can be preserved and how to manage it.
Well, I'll rewind back a couple months. There was the situation that went down with Tennessee and the NCAA. NCAA sent them a letter, and Tennessee basically fired back and very quickly took them to court. An injunction was filed, and I believe that injunction was stayed. I'm not an attorney, but essentially that rendered the NCAA absolutely powerless for this portal season. And as soon as that happened, it literally opened the floodgates and created what we've seen over the last month and a half. And so that was really kind of a game-changing court case that I think really changed the face of the portal this go around. I keep thinking about how NIL has evolved, and we're in year 3, but truly we're in year 2, because the first year there was only a handful of programs doing it. It was really in its infancy, but I really think of this almost as like a play or a movie that's being written, and we're really only in Act 2. Act 2 was nothing like Act 1, and truly I think next year could be just as different from this year as this year was from last year. So, the big time programs, you saw coaches move this year. NIL became part of coaching negotiations for the first time this year. You saw the big news with Calipari and Musselman, and NIL really became a huge deal where not only are players, that's the first thing they're asking for when they're going to when they're trying to decide where they want to play, but coaches are thinking about that when they're trying to decide where they want to coach. So in answer to your question, that's a long-winded way of laying the groundwork for. I don't anticipate it changing anytime soon. I think the NCAA is playing from so far behind that it's going to take probably a seismic change for the situation to really get some law and order, if you will. And I don't necessarily know that change is going to benefit UNM as much as everybody around here hopes. So, and I think the only seismic change that is truly possible where you don't violate Title IX issues is revenue sharing. And I got news for everybody. We are pretty low down on the revenue list compared to the other basketball programs that we're competing for players with. So I almost kind of hope that it stays like it is, because I think we have a competitive advantage here at UNM. That's a selfish desire, but I do know that it's affecting college sports in a big way.
I just want to comment on that last piece that Mackenzie you just touched on with the revenue sharing. I actually just jumped off Bleacher Report. There was a report that was released earlier today where revenue sharing looks like the big time conferences that have big time TV contracts with ESPN, Fox, CBS, where dollar amounts, it looks like schools might have like up to $20 million to distribute for revenue sharing with the athletes themselves. So you're talking about some of these programs that might have, I think Calipari at Arkansas had a budget of $5 million, right? That was the one that was kind of being thrown around. But when you throw an extra $20 million due to revenue sharing, like then you're talking some of these guys are making more money than some of the rookies in the NBA, right? Like we're talking big time money, and now the NCAA has to share that, and they're just losing more and more control as this kind of thing rolls out.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the conferences and the schools are in control now. The NCAA has relinquished the controls to college sports because they let it, and they're going to be very hard pressed to get it back, because every time they try to do something, they get crushed in court. And so, it's really, I honestly, I've read a lot of different thoughts and theories about how it could play out. But I mean, $20 million, yeah, it's probably what we're up against. But you have to remember, most of these schools are spending the vast majority of their money on football, not on basketball. UNM is very unique in that regard, that our NIL for basketball it is quite a bit bigger than it is for football. Because that's where the donor funds are being directed. So, and that's where the fan interest, it's a no-brainer. But for football, I mean, 20 million, maybe 10 of that's going to go to football in a $20 million scenario.
How closely then are you people at the NIL working with the coaches as far as budgeting the money? Is the the NIL company determining what budget each department gets, and then they're kind of telling you what players should get money? As for the Lobo football team, I've heard that only maybe 25 players out of the over 100 get NIL deals. How is that decided? Is that by the NIL or by the athletic program?
It definitely is dictated by the NIL collective for sure. It's in concert with the coaching staff, and but they do operate in isolation of each other. At the end of the day, the player has to fall in love with the school that they're going to, and so recruiting is still recruiting, but NIL is certainly a component of it, and they as an employee going into school wants to know, if you're an employee going into somewhere, you want to know what you're going to be making before you commit to work there, right? So, there is certainly a component of that.
So that the athletic program is aware of what type of NIL funds are available when they're recruiting these players, so they know when that question comes up.
Yeah, I mean,
offer.
They don't get involved in the specifics. That really happens at the NIL level. But they just, they say, am I good to go after this guy or not? And we have to make the financial decision about whether we can meet it. And, the one thing that's changed this year versus next year, or last year versus this year, pretty much across the board, is it's an order of magnitude different. NIL is probably more than doubled in college sports, literally just since last year. I mean, the floodgates have opened. It's crazy.
You mentioned Mackenzie, law and order to this whole thing, and right now you think it's in a good place. There's going to be changes. There's no doubt about it. Some people are saying it's already out of control. It's helped UNM losing Toppin. That hurt. You're going to win some and you're going to lose some. When you mention law and order, the NCAA has made trillions of dollars off images like this in images for years. They really got nothing to say, in my opinion. They let it go, you said, and now it's gotten so big. Good luck in reeling that in from their end. Now, when you say law and order down the line, because it's going to change, there's no doubt. Is there anything you foresee as far as anybody coming in and regulating this, or saying there's a cap on this or that? It's going to change. There's no doubt. Is there anything that you foresee?
Well, college sports is dominated. I mean, Title IX is hugely prevalent in college sports. I mean, if you think about all the scholarship equalization things that the athletic department has to do, because they're a government organization, to ensure that there's equal access and funding for both female and male athletes, it's a really sticky deal of how you give differential compensation to predominantly male athletes. How do you do that, and how do you do that under Title IX? And the only way, and even I don't know if it's totally legal, the only way, it has to be based on some objective metric. So revenue sharing, to me, is probably the only true objective metric that you could use. And I think the one thing that comes into play where there's some law and order is I do think that there's going to be some form of collective bargaining, because if the schools start paying these kids as employees, or these young men and young women as employees, then those employees have some collective rights. And right now there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that is shady. I mean, players are being taken advantage of by both, schools not honoring their commitments to the players getting, like you talked about what happened with Ramon Sessions. Like, I don't want to get into specifics, but I think players are getting not necessarily the greatest advice. And so it's really interesting. You've got these 18, 19-year-old guys, young guys and young gals, that are now having to make really huge financial decisions and legal decisions, and kind of doing it with a deadline. And, it definitely, it needs some kind of order. And I think collective bargaining could be a way to put some kind of caps and controls on that.
We haven't talked to you or Kurt. We had Drew Herrig on. Drew's a buddy of mine, and he works with 505 Sports Venture Foundation. He also walked on at New Mexico State, if anybody cares. But anyway, he's a good guy. I love him. And he's a Knicks fan. Hey, we haven't talked to anybody in about a couple months. We had Drew on to just talk basketball. We hadn't talked to Kurt since last summer. We know he's a busy guy. We had you on, and so it'd been a while. But when you hear like Dartmouth and it's an Ivy League school, but when you hear that those players are unionizing, how does that make you feel? Or do you have a comment on that or thought? I know that's a little off the topic, but that just popped in my head.
I mean, I think it's just the next it's just the next domino to fall in this process. I mean, they're being deemed as employees, and that was to deem themselves as employees, and we're just one step closer to that. I think it's inevitable, and truly, I think the collectives, and as soon as it starts being governed and handled by the schools, which I believe will happen within the next 2 to 3 years, I do think that will increase the amount of oversight and transparency and reporting, because the schools are already having to do a lot of that stuff through their compliance department. So the role of the collective could go away completely, or it could augment the school. But I do believe that the schools managing and name, image, and likeness is almost inevitable, and probably will happen in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I got a question, Mackenzie. So, we've been talking a lot about potentially like contracts in the NIL world, right? Like, how do you specifically figure out a way to get this to stop overturning so much? Or is there a way that, the NCAA could put in place where you could have like go back to, if you transfer, you have to sit out a year, or if you do it for the second time, you have to sit out a year. You have one transfer available, and then if you do it again the second time, you have to sit out. What do you think the likelihood of that happening is in the NCAA, where they allow you to do like a 2-year contract with somebody, or give you that type of reign to, do that type of stuff?
It's so far away from that now that it's really hard to envision any kind of control where the NCAA is telling a player what they can and can't do and what they're allowed to do. I mean, that's so far, we're so far removed from that. And every time they try to do anything close to that, it gets challenged in court and they lose. And so I don't know. All those things make a lot of really intuitive and pragmatic sense. And I know the coaches out there, our coaching staff included, that are trying to build a program and create continuity and not have this constant roster rebuilding and turnover every year, where truly, I mean, unlike professional sports where maybe a third or a quarter of your players are free agents, and even some of them are restricted, and you have negotiating opportunities where you can match offers. It's literally, if you're a coach in college sports right now, every one of your players is a free agent for 45 days. Like, imagine trying to build a team, a culture, a winning program with momentum, where it's like every year we're starting over, and it's just like, it's daunting, it's exhausting. And I know it's incredibly frustrating for our staff and for, every basketball staff across America, and football staff as well.
The only difference is there's no salary cap, right? So
correct.
When I think of something that needs to come in place, I don't know, at a conference level or a nationwide level, eventually there has to be a salary cap, or the Arkansas and the USCs of the world are just going to continue to grow, and the smaller schools that can't make money are going to continue to shrink. And, we got to think of the other sports outside of basketball and football also, right? Are they going to be able to continue to fund these smaller sports like volleyball and swimming and all these if things continue down this road? And the thought is probably not, so there are a ton of downsides, I think, that aren't being totally discussed. A third of these 2,000 players in the portal aren't going to find a new home. And are these guys really just giving up, maybe getting a real education and staying somewhere 4 years to get $20,000 to go play at a school in the middle of Arkansas or something like that? You just wonder about, like you guys are saying, the information they're gaining. And if it's not a huge sum of money, is it really worth the long-term investment of missing out on school or something like that? So those are just some of the downsides that I've been thinking about. And without a salary cap, I don't think any of those other things, rules, are going to matter.
Well, we haven't even talked about conference realignment, but it's very connected to this, because all those schools, what they're trying to do is they're trying to crush all the competition until they can literally create. Why would you want a salary cap when you're in power and you're dominating? And the people with the money, they wield the power. We're the tail, we're not the dog. So, we have to try to figure out a way to compete in a very dynamic and changing environment, and the rules are being interpreted and rewritten and revoked on a damn near daily or weekly basis. And Kurt's really done an amazing job with his legal background of kind of knowing how to maneuver that and how to do it in the right way.
We're joined by Abrazo Homes co-founder, co-owner, or owner, and 505 Sports Venture Foundation and Global Club board member, Mackenzie Bishop. And Mackenzie, we're going to take a commercial break, and then we're going to come back and we'll wrap your brain about more more NIL. Hey, again, check us out on X, ours formerly known as Twitter, Instagram. We're live now on YouTube. Feel free to comment. I'm surprised I haven't seen a comment yet. So we'll be right back.
Try that shit better than all. Try that shit better than all my intentions. Locked in, shorty, you got my attention. See your baby, I get you the business. Touchdown and pay you a visit.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
All right, welcome back to the Pit Press Live. I'm Ryan Tamori, your host. No bad jokes to start off this segment. I'm joined by Ed Nunez, Jacob Neff, Rick Thompson, Eric Moulton, my business partner in this endeavor, and of course, Mackenzie Bishop from Abrazo Homes, 505 Sports Venture Foundation, Global Club. He's a board member there. Talking NIL, I think probably with what you've seen with the transfer portal from San Diego State and Boise State. Is UNM and other schools NIL structure something that's sustainable? And can other schools continue to do these big NIL donors? Can they continue to have big NIL donors? And I would imagine that you probably have continue. The first person I think of was Rudy Chavez. He's like at everything. But you're going to support wherever. But can you see this at like Mountain West schools? Can you continue to see it being sustainable?
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, you think about the amount of revenue, not forget the Mountain West. Look at Kentucky. I mean, and they're probably a bad example too. But, if money is being invested the way that it is, and I use the word invested, if the team doesn't do well, does that investment go down? Does the revenue start to move with outcomes on the court? So that, I mean, it is a question that must be answered. The Lobo Club does very well and is having record-setting years, even with the presence of NIL the last couple of years. And I know there was some concern early on about whether that would divert money from Lobo Club and would it hamper fundraising efforts that are very important on that side. And truly, I think what NIL's done is it's helped propel on-court success, which is the greatest thing for revenue across all the different buckets of revenue for Lobo Sports. Ticket sales, donations, ticket, you have your seat donations that you have to give, like all that stuff. It's a tide that raises all boats. So to answer your question about whether it's sustainable, yeah, I mean, I think we've created a sustainable model. It remains to be seen. I certainly don't expect the trajectory of the growth in NIL expenditures and budgets. That is not sustainable. But I do think that, it's going to plateau and level out here somewhere, maybe move a little bit with inflation. But we can't keep doubling down. I'll tell you that much.
I'm just going to interject here, and I'm sorry to cut off everybody's face. Greg Lujan on YouTube. Hey, everybody. How we doing tonight? Hey, we're good. I don't know. I can't speak on behalf of these guys, but I'm good. I'm okay. Wondering how many mileage points these old West Coast Pac-12 schools are going to earn during baseball, softball. That's a lot of miles. LOL. I said that because nothing beats the old UCLA Rutgers volleyball rivalry. Rick, I'm throwing it over to you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward out here in the Bay Area to seeing North Carolina and Duke within the next few years play against Cal and Stanford. But what about the gymnastics teams and those guys? Are they traveling across the country to have those type of small sports meets? I have no idea.
Well, you want to talk about sustainability. That truly, in my opinion, is the thing that breaks first. Conference realignment is not done. I think it's very possible that football breaks off and turns into its own entity without conference affiliations. And then there's a complete reshaping of conferences back to some kind of semblance of, geographic, practicality and logic. I just don't see how the gymnastics team or the softball teams, they're sitting in 2 airports trying to make connections and missing flights and, and honestly, like, you travel that much, someone's going to get hurt. It's only a matter of time, and it'll be an incredible tragedy when it happens. But you put that many student athletes moving that far all over the country, and sometimes they're not able to fly. They're riding buses and vans. Like, it's not good.
That's true.
Eric had to jump off, so we appreciate him joining us. Again, newborn dad duties, so we appreciate Eric, and I know Mackenzie Eric really appreciates you. Yeah, dad duty calls. Rick, I'm going to toss it over to you again.
I guess just Mackenzie, other questions and thoughts I've been having, going back to more of the specifics of NIL and just I guess what like Ryan was saying in terms of not just sustainability of the NIL, but are you seeing a growth in new donors every year? Or is it the same return big guys that are being hit up year after year? And are they going to be expected, to do this continually? Or have we seen new donors since this has arrived?
We've seen an incredible influx of donors and interest, and a lot of them also Lobo Club donors within the last 3 to 4 months. When basketball conference season happened, when the UNM football coaching search happened, I think it kind of elevated and raised the game, not only for 505, but truly UNM athletics and Lobo Club. And I think now, we're working in concert with the folks over there on both sides of the fence better than we ever have. And I think that's a big reason why we've seen donors coming in, is I think people are finally understanding and getting their arms around it, because, really for like the last 2.5, 3 years, it's been this kind of cryptic, like, is this legal? There's all these people, and a lot of the old school folks like, I just don't believe in it. And it's like, well, you may not believe in it, but everybody's doing it. So if you want your team to be good, when you go at 7:00 every night, you better get in, because if we don't do it, we're getting passed. So, there's a saying in business, right? You're either disrupting or you're being disrupted. And so, I think it's really important that we stay at the bleeding edge. But I do believe, like, we've seen an incredible influx of revenue. And I definitely see a lot of upside to go with what's possible, at least at UNM. I know our collective, I think, has now drawn the ire of most of the Mountain West as being by far the biggest and most organized, especially for basketball. And so I think, that's frustrating for a lot of folks, but I know Boise State's playing some catch up, and they're doing a really good job in the portal. And I know San Diego State is, at the end of the day, they can sell weather and beaches, right?
I will say this, I'm a big college football fan, and I had the luxury, and I've talked about it, I had the luxury last year to go to Boise. And despite the fact, and this is for all the knocking I do on UNM, this is not a knock. They were playing a 2-win team at the time, Boise State, and it was still the buzz of the town. I mean, if you go there, it is truly, truly football. I mean, you go to restaurants on campus there, and they've got like, to me, I've been to Oklahoma, I've been to Florida. If I could redo, I know this is terrible to say from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but and a UNM alumni, but I fell in love with downtown Knoxville, man. If I could redo anything, I'd go to UT. I thought it was awesome. So the football schools there, to me, it was comparable to that. Why I'm saying that is I just feel like what Boise State has done, just giving them accolades. I think, and he was public enemy number one. And I've said this countless times. Leon Rice was a pleasure. You need a villain, like you need that. And Leon Rice was a pleasure to talk to. And I think he's done a phenomenal job up there. And Jacob, a gambling guy that we follow on Twitter, big college basketball guy. And he tweeted out towards the end of the season, he was like, Boise State Leon Rice has done such a good job there. It's, they just win. I mean, for the most part, they just win. I'm sure they would like more success in March. But I think he's done a phenomenal job there. And I think it's comparable. I'm not trying to toot anybody's horn there or anything, but I think what they've done, I just don't think that they are a football school. I think what he's done there has been a damn good job. And again, that benefits, I know people are probably listening to this, like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, that benefits UNM because it's just going to push you harder. What's Ed, what have we been talking about? The best thing's competition, right?
You know what? I think it is, but I'm reading an article in the Journal today, McKinsey, and if you look at the things that Kentucky and Arkansas, Duke, Michigan, Indiana, Kansas, Memphis, North Carolina State, North Carolina, and UCLA did in the portal, man. Particularly Michigan, UCLA had a down year. They added. So this, as you mentioned, this is not going to go away. It's exciting, right? Because back in the day, I'm smiling because this thing is out there. And you said a lot of old schoolers like me were probably like, is it legal? But back in the day, some Lobos that I knew said they used to get $500 handshakes from boosters in the locker room. I know that for a fact. When Norm Ellenberger was here, you weren't born when Coach Ellenberger was here. He had dudes that weren't going to class when they were ranked 4th in the nation, 24 and I can't remember what their record was, but they're ranked 4th. And so those things weren't exactly above reproach either. People were getting paid then too. People were getting paid in the past at other programs. They talked about John Wooden and his booster Sam Gilbert getting him all these players. So things have been done like that, hidden in the past, and now it's all out in the open. You're going to win some. JT Toppin's a blow. It's a huge blow losing a guy like that, right? It is. But I think what everyone's looking at is, at least when you back in the day, when you had a transfer, you're like, well, hell, he's gone for a year. Who are they going to get? We have to wait a year. Now you're like, well, who are they going to get? It's an anticipation. Every time I open the Journal, I'm like, okay, who's in the portal? Who might they get? It's going to be hard to replace a JT Toppin, right? That's a generational talent. We think might go to the pros, has a good chance. But I got to say this too, though. Coach Pitino said this about, thank you to everybody that stayed, and thanks for staying here. He had his own flirtation with Louisville, man. He did. He had his own flirtation. So there's some irony there. There's some definite irony. If he has another good year here, does anybody here really think he's going to stay if he has another good year? Now I'm hoping he does. I'm hoping, but if he has a chance to get $3 million from somebody else, and I'm saying if, will he stay here? So him saying, everybody, I'm glad you stayed here. Again, he had his own flirtation with Louisville for a brief minute. Looked like he might, So we don't know what's going to happen. That's all we know is we don't know what's going to happen. JT Toppin, the last minute I was like, he's staying, and then when I think I got it from Ryan or Eric sent it, I was like, boom, man, But I'm on the other end of it. I'm still looking forward to seeing what they might get. Now it's not going to be probably a JT Toppin, but you never know. And I think that's the exciting part about it. The unknown is who you may lose, and the unknown is who you may get. So the kid from Arizona was a good signing. I thought that was a good signing. So Nolan was a good sign. I was looking forward to seeing Tenier here. That was disappointing. That's what I mean. A mixed bag, right? A mixed bag. So we'll
Well,
see
the-
how that all goes.
The portal taketh and it also
Right.
giveth, right?
Yes.
So, while it's really frustrating to lose who we've lost, I know Josiah last year was a big blow, and I know a lot of people around here were pretty disappointed. We picked up Nelly, and that came out of nowhere. So, it's one of those things, and it's honestly one of the reasons I got involved with 505 early is, you talked about coaches, and obviously players can move, and we didn't know that it would be like it is 2 or 3 years ago, but what transcends that is your program, right? Your program transcends. If a coach leaves, it's our program is not, all due respect to our staff, like our program at UNM is New Mexico, it's Albuquerque, it's people give, a crap about cherry and silver, and NIL honestly is a way to, if and when Pitino moves on, and if he does that, it's because he's created a lot of success for us, which is we should cherish that and celebrate that, not opine that. If and when he moves on, we're going to be fine because we have each other and we have the program and we have the collective that's going to still be here. And we have an amazing group of people in the athletic department that are going to still be here. And there's a lot of great coaches. There's a lot of great players. And that's the thing. Well, yeah, losing JT when I, caught wind of that a couple days before it dropped publicly. Yeah, I was incredibly disappointed because I was excited about bringing the core back and making a run and being the odds-on favorite going into the Mountain West. And I was excited about that. It's like, well, you got to find the silver lining because you have to pivot and you have to be nimble and adaptive. But I know no one was more disappointed about losing JT than the guys in the program, the staff, because I think they really in their heart of hearts thought he was going to be here too. So finding that out at the last minute with 2 days left, in the portal being open, a lot of guys have already found homes, it kind of left us in a bind in a big way. And I know that those guys were incredibly disappointed. And honestly saddened, maybe angry. I don't know. They probably have different emotions depending on who you talk to, but yeah, it's a gut punch for sure.
Yeah, real quick comment on Coach Pitino. Now you're right. It'll move on, right? If Coach Pitino leaves, but I got to say this: when Coach Alford left, and then Coach Neal came, and then Coach Weir, I think if Coach Alford stays, New Mexico might get to an Elite Eight. If he had stayed and built the program, who can blame him from going to UCLA? Hey, it's UCLA. My wife is still upset at him saying that years ago. Who could blame him? So Coach Neal takes over, and then Coach Weir, and you lose. So I think coaching absolutely matters. Now, this is a big if, McKenzie. Hopefully, Coach Pitino stays here for the next 10 years or for 5 years. Let's say 5. I'm not wishing him away whatsoever. I think he's done a good job here. I'm just saying you have to think about the future, and whoever coaches after that, it definitely matters. Look around the conference. Danny Sprinkle's done a good job. Leon Rice. You've got Steve Alford. You've got some very good coaches in the conference. Brian Dutcher at San Diego State. So that does matter for sure. But again, I'm saying that hopefully Coach Pitino stays 5 to 8 years. That's what I hope for.
Well, and on the coaching topic, coaching in college is like coaching in the NBA now. In many cases, the players are making more than most of the assistants. Like, how do you coach that, right?
Yeah,
the NBA has to deal with that on a daily basis, and it's a challenge. It's a very different animal. You can't be this authoritarian. Why do you think all these coaches are retiring? It's a completely different world. And so the things that are necessary to succeed in coaching today it's about simplicity. It's about assimilating players into a culture and getting them bought in as soon as possible. Like the things that are necessary to be successful as a coach today are very different than, and I don't want to say that Alford's that's kind of an old mold, but I mean, he has a revolving door way more than we do at his program. He gets players in, but he loses great players every single year, and he's having to rebuild. And I think a lot of it is just because of style. And so, because it's hard to coach. I mean, you're basically like an NBA coach now with all of your players being free agents every year,
I am going to throw it to Jacob after this, but I wanted to read some comments and might be directed at you, Mackenzie. Again, joined by Mackenzie Bishop, a board member of the Lobo Club.
Hopefully they're good comments, not bad.
Well, I screen. I should say I'm screening them because at least I can read them. Yeah, they're good. Is there any culture aspect? I didn't give you your proper title. I'm sorry, Mackenzie Bishop again joining us from the Lobo Club, board member there, Sports 505 Sports Venture Foundation. Again, appreciate your time. Can't thank you enough. Rancho Hawk, I hope I said that right. Is there a culture aspect of this? Loyalty doesn't seem nearly as important. Obviously, there is a lot more to it, but maybe the current culture of people isn't what it once was, and that's not a knock. I think I kind of follow that. I don't know if you want to answer that. If there's a cultural
I
aspect,
mean,
I think there is.
I have to, I really side on more on the player side on this, because put yourself in their shoes, right? If you had the opportunity to go from making $50,000 in your job and someone was going to give you $100,000, you're going to do what's best for you, right? And maybe for some kids it's money, and for some kids they come from money and they don't really care so much about that. Or players are still able to make the right choice for themselves, and I think that's what's amazing about this structure is they don't get trapped in a situation where they're miserable and they're punished for being there. And if they're want to transfer, they get put on the bench and they don't get to play. Now it's like players have a lot more power and control. And so, yeah, I mean, loyalty I think is important. And I think that's an attribute that we probably would like to see and seek in recruiting. But I think, to say that players aren't loyal because they're seeking a better opportunity for themselves, I think is really unfair. And I think a lot of people, if they put themselves in that same position, would probably do the same thing.
I just think about, go ahead, Rick, sorry.
On the other side of that, do you feel that any coaches are kind of taking the Deion Sanders method and maybe telling kids currently on the team, hey, maybe you should go into the transfer portal, or I'm not going to play you the second half of the season, so you go into the transfer portal? And can these kids really expect to stay somewhere 4 years if they want to play there? Are they going to get pressure to move out because the school wants to get in new blood every year? And have you seen any of that?
Well, that's happened forever. I mean, that happened before NIL and before.
But I mean, maybe more so now since money's involved.
I think it's probably more. I don't know. That's probably a better question for someone else. I would have to imagine it's like Ed said, it's all in the open now. It's a much more transparent conversation, and I think in the past players didn't have agents, right? You weren't allowed to, it was forbidden, and now almost all of them do. So you're not only dealing with their AAU coaches and their parents, and hopefully in most cases, but you're dealing with agents, and agents are really running at the forefront of this and driving a lot of what's happening. And I think a big part of the movement this year is agents now see dollar signs in a big way. And a lot of agents that have operated at the professional level are now seeing like, oh man, this is actually worth my time. I think, when the contracts were $50,000 or whatever, they're like, yeah, like that's not worth my time. But when they start seeing these, 6-figure deals, agents, in some cases 7-figure deals at some schools, I think agents now finally see like, oh, there's a return on effort here and a return on time investment.
I'm going to throw it to Jacob. He's got a question.
Yeah, I got a question. So my kids, I know you guys have been, you said, we've been thinking it too. The transfer portal is, 45 days of being a free agent. Take us through, if you could, what an average week is, or, how many times you guys meet, or, what do you guys do on a week by week basis? Because I'd have to imagine, with just like how Toppin left, things have to change on a fly. You've got to be meeting, you've got to be on top of things. Could you maybe give us like an example of that, or, take us through a day?
Our collective is by and large volunteer. Kurt, who's our founder and our president, really, runs point. He does a lot of the heavy lifting. He still works, but he kind of has 2 full-time jobs, one in New York, one here, which is crazy, but he loves it. I mean, he really feels like he's got a niche where he can add some value, add a lot of value. And so he's really passionate about it. But yeah, it's a lot of group texts, regular meetings, because we're still a business. We still have a budget and payables, and, we have all the regular things we do in addition to fundraising. And so, during portal season, it's actually not as much all of us involved. I mean, Kurt really is handling a lot of that stuff himself, and then just kind of keeping us in the loop. And if he needs assistance or help, we jump in.
Awesome.
I am going to go back to the comments. Ben Wysong, we appreciate him. Uncle of Luke Wysong. Hats off to Mackenzie Kurt Roth, and the rest of the crew at 505 Sports Venture Foundation. They're such a great asset for UNM.
You want to talk about loyalty? That's a family that's loyal to New Mexico.
Yes, very much.
The Wysongs.
Mhm.
Yeah, it seems that way. What was I reading? There we go. Z Mountain. I appreciate that his uncle's watching. I really do. It's awesome. And again, that's why we started this thing. If Eric was on here, he'd continue to say that. This is a show for the Lobo fan. Z Mountain Shadow. Right now, it's a bidding war. New Mexico is one of the poorest states in the country. The current model does not seem to be favorable to states like New Mexico. And then Z Mountain Shadow. There are no Fortune 500 companies headquartered in New Mexico. I know there's some truth to that. I'm just reading these, Mackenzie. You can chime in whether you want. Ed, to our main man in Aggie, John Romero. Again, we do appreciate you watching. And as I told you, bless Teddy Allen and bless that 12 seed 2 years ago, knocking off UConn because it won me money. There's no loyalty in it. As we talk about NIL, whatever happened to Don Haskins and Lou Henson, coaches of the world who are dedicated to their school and not the Greenbacks? One national title, the other made the Final Four. This is hearsay, but when I, and I talk about it quite a bit, I was a big boozer at one point and I quit. But one night I happened to run into a guy at a bar and I was sitting there and I told him, I was like, I used to be a sports reporter for UNM. And I'm telling this story because he was like, well, I'm in town. I work for NMSU. And we went down the rabbit hole of Lou Henson and Don Haskins. And and I'm fascinated by Don Haskins, especially with everything with Glory Road and Texas Western back in the day. He was telling me that Lou Henson and Don Haskins hated each other, hated the hell out of each other. And yeah, but they despised John Wooden so much. And again, if I could go into more research, again, this is what this gentleman told me, and I was fascinated by it. And Ed, I've told you this story. Mackenzie, you might appreciate this, but they got together at a bar in between El Paso and Las Cruces. Again, what this gentleman was telling me, allegedly, and that they got together and got drunk off their asses. And I know it was known that Don Haskins was a big drinker. That they would get together and just straight talk shit about John Wooden, and that the Pyramid of Success was a full-blown scam, and that all those guys at UCLA were being paid. And I thought that was a fascinating story, that these two guys hated each other, but they hated John Wooden more. So they got together and got drunk and talked crap. I think it's a great story. Again, it's allegedly what the guy told me. And I've always felt like that, to look more into it, it would be fascinating. But I just thought sitting there talking to him, that was a pretty good story, that you had these two legendary coaches in the Southwest. And I, Lou Henson going to Illinois and where he won there and winning at MSU, thought that was great. John, I'll be honest, I think those guys are gone, man. It's gone. I mean, John Calipari left Kentucky for Arkansas. Now there's a history of basketball with Arkansas. And Nolan Richardson, I mean, they've won a national title, beat Duke. I think Duke was going for a three-peat. But to that question, I don't think there's any loyalty. Rancho Hawk, again, I can see the viewpoint of the student athletes. However, there's no repercussions for the student athlete. I think that could potentially hurt who donates and lead them to not donating in the future. Mackenzie, I'll throw this back to you, but there was I think the kid who was the offensive lineman from Alabama went somewhere, accepted the NIL money, and because there was nothing in place, he was able to accept the money, and then he went back to Alabama or vice versa. Yeah, I can put that question, this comment back up if you want to look at it, if you have any comment on that.
Well, I mean, all this starts with contracts. We have really good contracts that are, broken up. They have mutual protections for both the athlete and also the collective. If that guy got free money and left and they didn't have a good contract, then, is that the player's fault, or is that the people who gave him the money's fault? Right. No, that's definitely the people's fault. Yeah. I mean, it's like, so, repercussions for the players. I mean, coaches can still not play them, right? I mean, at the end of the day, these guys want to play, and you know, I think one of the things that's going to happen, and talking about playing time, so we talked about Act 1, Act 2. I think Act 3, you've got these teams that are absolutely stacked, right? Lamont Butler left San Diego State, went early in the portal to Kentucky, thinking he's going to start at point guard. He's not starting. Abo left Boise. He went to USC thinking he's going to start. He might be like the third string guy. And I'm like, playing time is going to come back. And I do think Act 3 next year is where we find some kind of equilibrium where that still matters. The money's going to matter too. But these guys, they don't want to just make money in college. They want to get to the next level. And so the players that really do are going to try to go where they can get exposure. So I do think Act 3 next year is going to be a little bit of the pendulum swinging back and being a little bit more balanced. So, I don't think hope is lost. I think this is just part of the deal right now, and we have to get through it and we have to endure. But I do think, look at the transfers we've gotten, and boys, like, we got guys from Arizona who wanted to play. Like, who comes from a Power 5 and wants to come down? It's because they want to play. And so there's all kinds of different types of transfers. So it's this thing where it's like, we got to throw up our hands because we have no chance. I'm like, that's completely false. You just have to stay in the game long enough for this thing to equalize, collective bargaining to come on, at some point, and then hopefully find some semblance of stability into the future. But I do think separating football is going to be a huge deal because that drives everything.
I'm going to go back to the comments now because I saw the name and then the clown emoji. It's me, Candy Morgan. It's me, Amadio. Did you see that clown emoji? Fran Fraudchilla. Fraudchilla. There you go. There we get a new name.
They're not resentful at all, are they?
No, and that's going on 24 years. Saying he saw one JT game and said he was too good for New Mexico and belonged in the Big 12. It's a me, Candy Morgan. I didn't see anything like that, and I'll go to my resident guy who knows everything about college basketball. It's a great introduction. You didn't see that, right, Jacob?
I didn't see that. I don't really follow him. I hear him on broadcasting games and calling games, but he's not one of my people that I need his opinion 24/7 or really value kind of what's going on. I know that he does do a lot of overseas evaluations of players now for the NBA. I don't really what does he do? He watches one game and says, "Oh, this guy's too good for the get out of here." Whatever, that's nonsense to me. But
well,
sure.
Guess what? I do follow him and I do respect his opinion. But that being said, college players do not have to play in a big conference to make it the NBA. Look at Ja Morant. He played at Morehead State. He was a 3 pick in the draft. If you're good enough, they will find you. They found Danny Granger here, Giddens. Countless other Lobos and players from nowhere state have made it to the NBA. If they can find Jokic wandering around in Serbia, then I'm pretty sure they can find Toppin slamming it in the pit. So that is a funny, I guess, kind of thought to put out there that he's too good to play somewhere. If you're too good, then you deserve to be a pro. But that's just my thoughts. I don't think, and if Toppin's agent Sessions was putting that thought into his head that more exposure, I think Mackenzie already hit it on the head. The Lobos games are already all nationally televised. What else is there to get more exposure at? The Lobos were going to be a top 25 team going into next season and probably throughout the year if he had stayed. So whatever advice some of these agents are giving or receiving, it may just be for their personal vices, like Mackenzie has explained, unfortunately. But in this case, anyone can make it from the NBA from anywhere on earth.
To use JT as an example, right? JT was going to get 12 to 15 shots a game next year. Easy. Almost every game. Like the offense was going to run through him. Wherever he lands, and I do wish him well, he may get 5, right? If he's lucky enough to start, maybe he gets 7 or 8. And it's just like, do you want to be the guy and have the exposure and have the offense run through you where you can showcase your skills? or do you want to be a role player who's the fourth option on a stacked team? Like, it's just, it doesn't. I mean, if your goal really is to get to the NBA, and I truly believe that, you know, JT has that kind of potential, he's not there yet. But if you really want to get there, like, you want to go to a place where you're the man, you know?
It's kind of,
At least that's me.
I got to say this real quick. It's almost like Alec. He was going to be here. He was going to start. He was going to have a good role, and then, you know, he was going to get the ball. You know, maybe not as much as he might have wanted, and that's why I heard he left. But he went to Nebraska. How many shots did he get a game there? So I got to ask you this, Mackenzie. It doesn't matter now. He's gone. He's not a Lobo anymore. But is there any rumors where you heard he may land? Has anybody said anything where JT Toppin may land up? Is there any rumors out there?
I mean, some people say Kentucky because of the connections with Sessions. They're so stacked at that position. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I really feel like he'll wind up somewhere closer to home. He'll be Texas, Big 12 somewhere. You know, he'll get a good chunk of money wherever he lands. There's no question. I heard they were talking about in the opening drive this morning, and they said that every freshman of the year for like the last 5 years is transferred out of the Mountain West, which was kind of a staggering stat. I was like, I need to go look at that. But it was like Darian Williams from Nevada.
That's not true, because Degenhart was freshman of the year.
Okay, so Degenhart was an exception. That's a
no, it was, I think, 5 out of 7.
But it's like this crazy number. It's like, you know, it's just kind of the par for the course. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's frustrating to lose him, and I do wish him well. But, you know, I think we're going to be fine, and I hope that he gets what he's looking for.
Well, can you tell us, with that news budget that your NIL company might have, who might be targeting or what positions? Any?
Well, I mean,
you can share with us.
The hard thing is, you know, because we found out. I mean, we've been operating this whole time thinking we were going to have JT locked in at the 4 or even maybe the 5, and you know, we're late to the game, and so a lot of these guys that we probably would have been liking to go after are off the board now. So money is not a challenge. We can get who we want to get. So, you know, the biggest thing that we need right now is just guys that want to be here and want to fit in that role. So it's you know, now it's size, now it's rebounding, because we lost those two things with JT. But I know all along you'll see, as they continue to sign guys, they wanted to get bigger at the guard positions. They wanted to improve outside shooting at as many positions as we could, and also improve interior just size. So I think the guys that you'll see, you know, I think there's a lot of rumors circulating. Some of them are true, some of them aren't. They fit that mold, right? They're big dudes, they rebound, or they're tall wing type players that shoot the ball really well. You know, but the biggest thing, I mean, Pitino tweeted it out earlier. If you've got one of the best point guards in the country, you can overcome a lot of deficiencies. And I mean, there's a lot of what JT did last year that I think Donovan made him a much higher, more productive player than he might have been with a more typical point guard who's not as gifted a passer and as gifted as a distributor as Donovan is.
That might be attractive, right, for getting someone new in. If you have a top point guard in the country and someone gives you the ball on point every time, that could help. So thanks.
I don't think anybody's going to argue with that fact. You know how good I think Donovan was. That's the thing. I'm gonna, you know, I don't know how I feel posting this, Mackenzie. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but here you go. Is there any chance JT comes back, changes his mind? I'm going to probably say no. I can answer that. I don't think so. You feel free to answer that if you want. I don't think so.
I would say the odds are long. Buy a lottery ticket.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Probably get struck by lightning. We've got one of the best point guards in the country, and that should be attractive to getting players. Bravo, Ricky. Z Mountain Shadow. Everybody loves Ricky and Jacob and Ed. Mackenzie, does anybody else have any final thoughts? You're welcome. I'm going to take another commercial break. You're welcome to join us afterwards. Actually, before we go to commercial break, I think I've got a question for you. Do you know? Do you help in I know you're with 505 Sports Venture Foundation, and this is why I probably should have went to Henderson, but I didn't. A terrible joke. You're helping out with the other, programs, and I know that some of the girls, the women's basketball team was on paid by 505 Sports Venture Foundation. Obviously, a max exodus. But quickly, do you know anything about the new players transferring in and what Bradbury's got going on over there? Can you put a little bit of insight in that? Because I really want to give the women's program some attention.
For sure. It's in flux. Obviously, there was a great deal of roster turnover there. We are stepping up our commitment to the women's basketball team as well as the football team. Bronco's got some. I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to meet with him or talk with him, but he is a dynamo. We were very fortunate to have him. But yeah, no, I think no real specifics, but I will say that we're stepping up our commitment on the 505 side to really try to support the program as well as we can and kind of keep our support in lockstep, if not ahead of what we've been doing, because it is important. Women's basketball at the University of New Mexico that's where I grew up. My parents couldn't afford to go to men's games, so we went to women's games. And it's a great game, and the pit still draws. It's amazing how many fans we get, and most of the time they're playing in gyms where there's 10 people in them. And so it's cool when they get to do that and they get to play in front of a lot of people that love what they do.
And very quickly, no, we have not had the pleasure of meeting Bronco. I won't go into it for reasons unknown. But what do you think? What do you make of Bronco? And Ed has said it. He got Virginia to an Orange Bowl. He was very, very good at BYU. BYU was hard to beat with him there. And I think before we let you go, unless you want to come back after the commercial break, you're more than welcome to. But what have you made of Bronco? Because I know and I'm going to do the John Gruden thing. He's like a football guy's guy. But what have you made of him? And I know you kind of mentioned it, but can you elaborate on him more? And maybe not this year. We would all want to win this year, but moving forward, is he the right guy for this job at this time? There's
zero doubt in my mind that he's the right guy. That we could not have picked a better candidate for what we need right now. He is a rebuilder. If you look at the places where he's been, BYU was sub 500 3 years in a row before he got there, and he won 6 games his first year and then won 9 or 10 plus games every other year he was there. And did a very comparable turnaround at the University of Virginia. He hadn't been to a bowl game, I think, in like 15 or 20 years before he got there. So he embraces the challenge. He definitely approaches it with a completely different mindset and perspective. You want to talk about culture change. The amount of people that have been in the portal on the football team, that is not a bad thing. He is completely revamping and changing the culture at University Stadium, and I think people are going to be impressed. We have a very difficult schedule this year. It's not going to be easy, but I have no doubt that he'll be successful and he's the right guy for the job.
And lastly, here you go, Jared Rael. Where can I get a 505 SVF shirt? I wouldn't have the answer to it.
Jared, hit me up on X and I'll follow you and we'll get you one.
Much appreciate that to Jared. I'm going to hit a commercial break. Mackenzie, you're welcome to join us on the next
Sure. Why not?
segment. I don't know what we'll talk about. We'll figure out something. Again, this is more of like a town hall. But let me get to a commercial break and we'll be back.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
And you're going to have to forgive me because I've been looking at my phone. The Knicks retook the lead, so I'm very happy there. Yeah, I'm pretty
Close out
happy about
time.
that. Yes, it is. Are you a Knicks fan too?
No, but I'm a nobody fan, so I like to just root for teams that haven't won in a while. Sorry, Ryan.
Well, they've sucked for a long time. This is I might get your thoughts on the NCAA tournament, Mackenzie, since we hadn't had you back in a while. But this guy SM, I wish I could see that picture better, but it looks like a guy eating a hot dog. Hey, tomorrow night at the Ice Tubs game, I think I'm not. Some of my friends are doing the 9. How we're going to celebrate some other people's birthday is the 9-inning challenge, 9 beers, 9 dogs. I'll be there to witness it. I saw the Fran comment also. Appreciate it. Hey, Ruben Baez, this is an excellent show, gentlemen. Question for Mackenzie. Feel free to chime in with the question, and I'll post it and see if Mackenzie will oblige to answer it. He can use his Fifth Amendment right here, so I'm open to it.
May have to on some of this.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to ask. Every time I think of the Fifth Amendment, and I'm sorry, I should put it on here. I think of Chappelle's show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th. I was looking at you, Rick, when I said that. And here it is. Ruben Baez, Mackenzie. How does New Mexico rank in NIL money in the Mountain West? Are we top 3, top 6, or 7 through 10? I know you answered that question as far as basketball goes, and you might be reiterating it, but if he hadn't been, listening for the whole, hour and 13 minutes we've been on, if you don't mind answering that again.
Yeah, I think by all accounts, we're probably head and shoulders above everybody in basketball. And I would say in the coming year, we're probably mid-third for football, maybe. I know that there's some pretty big investment in football from the usual players, but basketball we're head and shoulders above most of our competitors.
I just wanted to last, one of my final questions here, and then if the other guys have another question. With the NCAA tournament, I think with the number of bids, and then I got East Coast roots, and then Rick and I, as I always mention, the Seton Hall fight, and Tim Chav is a friend of ours. Seton Hall goes on and wins the NIT, and they beat UNLV in the process. How did you feel about the 6 teams? I mean, obviously fantastic for us and what we talk about. The 6 Mountain West teams getting in, the performances by the teams, and at least, I try to remain objective as possible, but it was damn cool to see UNM on what were they on TNT, True TV, and to see them on the floor again. It just felt like it had been forever with the March Madness logo on it. It was cool. So that's kind of a loaded question, and I got a lot in there, but just your thoughts about the 6-bid league, and I imagine you were probably in Vegas. I guess just the whole aspect of UNM in March and the Mountain West and the teams getting in, and then the performance. I'll clump that in. I'm sorry for that long-winded question.
Well, March was an awesome month. I'll just put it that way. Didn't work as much as I probably should have. Flew around, stayed in a lot of hotels, but no, I mean, I think the 6-team league or the 6-bid league this year was a testament to the effort and resources and investment, both time and energy, that has gone into a lot of schools in the Mountain West. I think one of the challenges why we didn't do as well in March, obviously everybody wanted to talk about the seeding. We had a lot of teams that were about the same. We had a ton of parity at the top, and that meant a lot of low seeds, no elite teams, and so we kind of all beat up on each other. I think Mountain West officiating doesn't help us in March, but I think it was by and large a banner year for the Mountain West. It was probably the best year ever in terms of Mountain West basketball. And honestly, I mean, every night it was entertaining basketball during conference season, even before March. So from a Lobo perspective, the run in Vegas was amazing. I'll remember it for the rest of my life for sure. And for this group that really invested so much in the turnaround, and for them to get that and to taste that after some kind of negative stuff happened during the season this year and also the previous season. It was really cool for them to taste and experience that success, because they really worked their butts off for it.
Does anybody else have anything? I know Jacob's probably your new best friend because his Mountain West officiating tolerance is at an all-time low.
Higgins. We'll say the guy who kicked me out of the pit is no longer the head of Western officials, so that's good.
Wait a second.
Wait a minute.
Oh, you're
Just,
safe.
just real quick. Who is that?
So-
McKenzie?
John Higgins is a former NCAA referee. If you pull him up on Google, I'm sure everybody knows him because he's done Final Fours. And he asked me to leave the pit during a Boise State game when I was giving him a hard time for how hard they were hedging on ball screens. So that's my claim to fame in the front row where I sit, is that I didn't get kicked out this year. But he retired from game officiating and became the Western, I don't know his exact title, but he's head of officiating for the Western United States. And he just took a new job to do that same thing for the Big 12. So
You have to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say officiating is going to get a lot better now that he's gone.
I have to ask. You have to tell the getting kicked out story. You've put yourself on the spot. I need to know that because it's the best thing ever.
So it was Boise State 2 years ago, and a game we lost. Boise State has our number in the pit because Leon Rice is a very good coach. I agree with you, Ryan. And they were blocking. They were hedging really hard on ball screens, and in my opinion, impeding player movement, which is the way the rule is written. And I told him about it. I may have used a 4-letter word that I shouldn't have used. And I have seats that are good enough that he could definitely hear exactly what I said. So he thought that I should watch the rest of the game outside. So
that's a great story. I appreciate that. I'm sorry. It's just up there. I enjoy those kinds of things. Does anybody have any other questions for Mackenzie before we wrap up here?
No, I was just gonna say that's pretty much about par on course for what I expect from Mountain West officials at this point. So we'll go with that. I mean, kicking a fan out for saying something like that, get out of here. Focus on the game.
Yep, I agree.
Rick, Ed, final, as I always say, Joe, and I didn't clip that soundbite, damn it. Jerry Springer, any final thoughts?
No, I don't.
Richard?
Nothing from me. I think we've gone long enough. I guess just one final question from Mackenzie. I think it'll be quick. What other sports programs are you guys working with outside of just football and men's and women's basketball? And if you could just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, we've made, I'm going to probably not get all of them, but we've made investments with baseball, softball, tennis, maybe even golf. So we've made investments in as many sports as we can. And honestly, it's Kurt's stated goal that all student athletes at the University of New Mexico get some kind of NIL money by the time we're done. That's the goal.
No, Kurt's a good guy. I do like Kurt a lot, and he does a lot. And his story about how he loved, a guy from Long Island who ended up at UNM, and then his love for UNM basketball. I don't know. I like him a lot, and he's ambitious, and he's a smart cat. You're gonna love this comment, Mackenzie. John Romero Mackenzie has a little snake in him. I like it, and we haven't done it in a while because it was kind of a basketball thing. But we were doing a snake of the game, like a recap or a snake of the week.
And this is a snake of the week, bro.
He was nice enough to record that for us.
One final thought. Mackenzie, how many times do you get told that you look like Derek Carr?
Like Derek Carr? Oh, I haven't gotten Derek Carr before, but
really?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it, I guess. And I will say, for every ref that doesn't like me, 2 of them we fist pump every time they come into the pit. So, because
there we go.
They like hopefully they like knowledgeable feedback. Even they'll come down and they're like, "Did I miss that one?" I was like, "Yeah, you probably missed that one."
You know what? Let me just say this as a former official. I officiated 22 years.
I was waiting for you to chime in.
Yeah. I had to say this, man. There was a lot of fans that were knowledgeable, and then there were some others. You got to remember, I'm in the I always called it laser focus when I was on the floor. This one guy yelled at me so bad for about a quarter. It was years ago at Valley, and I might have lost my concentration for maybe a minute or two, because he was just on me. So I'm just going to say this, Mackenzie, all due respect to you and all the rest of my fellow pit press and Jacob, Rick, it's not the easiest job in the world, man. It's not.
It's not.
And I know about the hedging. I get all that. I get it. It's easy to call. It ain't nothing against you, Mackenzie. You're a great guy, man. It's easy to call from row 6. That's all I'm going to say. because when I'm on the court, I've missed calls. You know, I don't take it personal when these guys get mad at the refs. I mess calls up too, man. I'm human. I didn't ever do it on purpose. Happens. But
no, I will say that they are all human, and they're all, for the most part, awesome dudes. And
yeah, you know,
and
there
even the
those,
ones that people hate, you know, they'll pan them on Twitter. I'm like, he's just a dude who's trying to do a good job. He didn't walk down the tunnel saying, I want to suck today, you know, like, so, you know,
to
they're
be
all
fair,
trained.
there are those ones that want to come in. I ref with them too, man, that wanted to come in and control the whole game. And when
Those
I
are
saw
the ones I have an issue with.
yeah, when I saw their name, I'm not perfect either. I never said I was. I, you know, missed calls. I never did it on purpose. You know, I tried my best. But there were certain officials that I'd see on my list. I'm like, oh boy, we're gonna have a long night tonight.
I've
uh,
got mine
Yeah.
too.
I have the problem with the ones that think that 20,000 fans came to watch
Right.
them instead of
Yeah.
the basketball
agree
game.
with that. Definitely agree
That's
with
when
that.
I have a problem, when it's like, oh, there was 47 fouls in that game. I wonder what was going on. You know, like, come on, you could call a foul every play down the court. So
Yeah, when they
it's
give
terrible.
guys technicals for being pumped up about a big play, I'm like, guys, come on. Like, these are top tier athletes who are competitors, and you know, it's like just let it go.
Or years ago, Joey Crawford throwing out Tim Duncan for laughing. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Tim Duncan's
what
on
I
the
do?
bench, and he's laughing and he threw him at him. He's like, come on, man. That stuff like that is like, you know, that's way over the top to me.
Silly. Yeah, I agree.
Aaron Boone, last week?
Oh,
or
that
the
was
week
horrible.
before?
Yeah, that was a horrible
A
ejection.
fan behind him yelled, and they kicked him out of the game.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Yeah, that's terrible.
Must have been a Mountain West baseball umpire.
No, I think it was Angel Cabrera, or what was it?
Hernandez.
No. I don't think it was
If it was Angel
Hernandez.
Hernandez,
How does that guy still have a job?
That dude gets blamed for, even if he's not involved, and he's made some bad calls. But that was not Angel Hernandez. I saw that one.
They keep all the guys vote to keep him around so that he takes the ire of everybody.
Oh man.
there's been so many good memes with him where it's like the missed call log and it just says missed call, and it's got Angel Hernandez's name on it. So great.
You know, again, as we, you know, I was trying to wrap up here, but some more comments flying in. Miguel Sanchez, I'm very upset about that. Officiating basketball is the toughest officiating in sports. Z Mountain Shadow. Ruben Valles, Mackenzie, you're going to appreciate this. Thanks for coming on, Mackenzie. You really added to the show today, and I will be joining. And I'm going to assume by joining, I'm going to say Lobo Club, or, you know, not Lobo Club, of 505 Sports Venture Foundation.
Join both. We need it all.
SM, Mountain West Conference, the guy down in the dog, Mountain West Conference refs are trash. Z Mountain Shadow, hope for the best for JT. 34 seconds left in the next game. Hope for the best for JT. That's the new world we are living in. That is accurate. I'm going to throw this out there again. We want to send you to our website. That's Twitter. Here's our website, thepitpressnm.com. I've been trying to write more. It hasn't happened. I'm sorry. Visit us there. Our website looks good. If I do say so myself, I'm glass half empty kind of guy. Visit us on X. You're probably watching us on there now. The artist formerly known as Twitter. At the Pit Press NM, and we were on Instagram for an hour. Apparently, you can only stream on Instagram for an hour. Thanks, Mark Zuckerberg. Follow us on Instagram at the Pit Press NM. And very quickly, Mackenzie, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate your time. You know what? I'm going to thank you after this. Again, we're coming to you live, the Pit Press Live. How weirdly can I say that anytime? The Pit Press Live every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. Mountain Time. Throughout, right up until basketball season starts, then we'll adjust accordingly. Again, Eric and I created this. I'm going to say this at the end of every show. Eric and I created this because Eric came to me thinking that there was not enough Lobo coverage in this town. That's not a knock on Jeff. That's not a knock on the Journal. I worked there for a year. It's not a knock on the TV stations. Not a knock on what Jeff and JJ Buck do. You know, Joe Neal at 1017 The Team. We just felt there could be a deeper coverage of UNM. And, you know, we had Tex. I was on Tex Ags, and we had a guy there from Tex Ags. It's an entire network, and those guys do a full-time job covering Texas A&M. So again, the comments, this is for those watching. I didn't think when we started this a year and a half ago, coming from being on, 610, we have almost 360 people watching us. I thought maybe 10 or 12. For this niche of that market, I think that's pretty damn good. And there have been a couple of people who have told me like, that's really damn good. So for the Lobo Nation community, really appreciate it. Glad you guys are on board. I know everybody disagrees with me. Rick and Rick and Ed and Jacob seem to be the hot guys on the show. Consistent, the usual suspects. I called you guys hot guys. Most liked. How's that? But to Mackenzie, I know you talked to Eric the most. Getting you on. I truly mean this. I wouldn't say it. I really appreciate your time. And if there's anything else you'd like to say, you have the board again. Mackenzie Bishop from 505 Sports Venture Foundation, the Lobo Club. He's a board member there, and he owns co-founder of Browser Homes. But I really appreciate your time tonight and the insight on NIL, because I learned something new about it every day.
Well, thank you guys for having me. And I will just say, one of the silver linings of this wild world of transfer portal and NIL that we live in, you guys are doing two broadcasts a week during the summer. You couldn't have found enough to talk about a long time ago. And now college basketball, Lobo basketball is a year-round affair. And that's a really good thing for a university. That's a really good thing for a program. It's a really great thing for 505. So really appreciate you guys doing that, investing that time. I know that there's a lot that goes into what you guys do, and appreciate you just shining the light.
Well, we appreciate you. And on behalf of Rick Thompson, have to do it. Richard. And I can't bing bong yet. Nobody else get that joke. Rick Thompson from the Bay Area, Jacob Neff, Ed Nunez. My name is Ryan Tamori. We really appreciate everybody watching. We'll come to you again we'll be live again next Tuesday night at 8:00. Everybody have a great weekend. Start enjoying your summer in the month of May. Enjoy it, and appreciate everybody watching in. Have a good weekend.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.